This is the Rope A Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. Hope everybody's having a good hump day. I know I have, even though the weather is starting to begin to look a lot like winter. I wasn't going to say what you thought I was. Anyway, we are live per usual, 6 on the West, 9 on the East, and 2 UK time. As always, you can check out the Rope A Dope Radio Podcast live like you are right now, right here on blogtalkradio.com/rope-a-dope radio and archives there as well. But also you can listen on archive anytime at Apple Podcast, aka iTunes. You can rate and review there. That would be very nice. Stitcher, Player FM is another great source. Tune in. Just a variety of places. And of course, you can check out the Rope It Over Radio podcast YouTube channel as well. We're actually going there live as we speak. It archives, and the link will be in the box. If you usually, I just do the first 30 minutes, hour of the show on YouTube. There is a link to listen to the rest of the live show, and obviously for the people that are listening to it on archive a little later in the week, links right there. You can listen to the whole episode in its full form. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about, both in and outside the ring, of course, as we always do when it comes to boxing. We will start where we normally start, recap. We'll recap Anthony Joshua's performance in front of 78,000 avid boxing fans, or at least heavyweight Anthony Joshua fans, to say the least. We'll talk about how the fight went. We'll also talk about 2018 for him. Obviously, that's been a hot topic. Him and Wilder on a collision course, or at least that's what the fans want, to meet in the summer of 2018, outdoor Wembley, pack another 90,000 in there. That'd be phenomenal. We'll talk about why, how, where, what, when, why it's not happening, that type of thing. We'll talk a variety when it comes to that. We'll cover the other fights as well. On the undercard, we'll talk a little bit about that and also recap the last quarterfinal of the World Boxing Super Series. My guy from Minnesota unfortunately did not prevail. Bramer really fought well, though. Really looked good at that weight class, too, coming down from light heavyweight. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But now the semifinals in the World Boxing Super Series, both in the cruiserweight and the super middleweight, are set. The next round will be January, February sometime. That's the semis. And then they go right to the finals in May. So here we are November 1st. And we know, we're looking for some fights around March, April, May, to get announced. There's a whole string of fights before we even get to that. So that's pretty cool. Definitely pretty cool. So we'll definitely start with recap. Of course, we'll talk a little bit of news, and then we'll get into this weekend. We'll get into this weekend. I got this hood on right now. It's kind of cold. I got this hood on, and it's kind of messing me up as far as not being able to hear myself, so I don't know. It's kind of weird. Anyway, Wilder Stavern 2, the fight that everybody wanted to see. Well, not really. But it's a bell ringer. And if you've heard the podcast before, you know what I mean by it being a bell ringer. Once that bell rings, I'll be paying attention. I'll be paying attention to that fight. Another fight I'll be looking forward to stylistic-wise, Sean Porter versus Adrian Granados on the undercard. I think that'll be a fun fight to watch. Also, Sergey Lipinets gets his shot at a title against the guy he should win against. There's also, we'll talk about the rest of the schedule for the weekend. HBO randomly has some, and so does ESPN. Actually, that's tomorrow on a Thursday, not Friday like I shouldn't say they normally do, but so yeah, we will definitely look forward to this weekend and talk about it a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to go long on that Stavern 2 fight because I realize it's not a fight that anybody wanted to see, as previously mentioned. However, if you watch boxing long enough, there are a couple of things that could rear their ugly head and make it an interesting fight. I think the possibility is there. But as far as news wise, like I said, we will go in on the whole Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, of course, White, Dillian White is thrown in there as well. And HBO is showing competition to sign Anthony Joshua as well. So there is a lot to get into that. We'll kind of break it down. We'll also talk about some recent Garcia Linares talks. That would be a fight that a lot of people would like in the first quarter. We'll talk about Eric Gomez and how he all of a sudden started calling Mikey Garcia back out. It was kind of weird, especially like Mikey says, you have my number, dude. Like, why don't you just call me? There's no point in making it a big deal on Twitter out of nowhere. But we'll talk about that because now they've had some meetings, and the Linares fight might still be on. And it really, more than likely, it's because of a fight fell through for them. And we'll get into the details of that and some other news out there, whether it's, WBO mandatories, the channel Epics is getting back into the boxing realm. And then a big one. And this is what we'll talk about probably after we talk about, we'll have recap, we'll break down the Wilder White stuff. But honestly, the UFC, Dana White entering the boxing fold in 2018, Zuffa Boxing. We saw the t-shirt at the press conferences. Pretty interesting. Dana White entering the fray of boxing. And just how will he do it? Will he sign just a couple of fighters and just promote them? Will he look to, sign young prospects and build them? What is going to be the framework of him working in boxing, the UFC working in boxing? To me, I think I got a couple of things figured out as far as logical steps where you go, well, yeah, that makes sense. That'd make a lot of sense because obviously Golden Boy, Top Rank. I mean, Oscar and Bob are not really cool with Dana right at the moment. I know that Dana White had I think he's had a relationship to an extent with both of them probably. But especially, they used to be a little bit cooler with Oscar De La Hoya. Obviously, that fight between McGregor and Mayweather going 3 weeks before, Canelo Golovkin, and just some beef out in the air to an extent. My point is, to me, it kind of points where he get his fighters from. I think I'm not going to say it's obvious because I wouldn't have known. None of us really would have known that they were going to begin promoting, but it sounds like it's a done deal, and it sounds like they're going to actually make an investment here. So that kind of piques my interest. As far as another promoter in the game, Eddie Hearn trying to take over America. Well, Dana White has a stronghold when it comes to, events and promoting, producing events, television stuff. I mean, he definitely has a lot of experience. So we will cover that pretty much in detail. I'd say that those will be the two big topics, the Wilder, Joshua, Dillian White, Eddie Hearn thing, and then obviously the UFC promoting boxing events. That's what we'll talk about. So as far as recap from the weekend, real quick, let's go to the World Boxing Super Series. Like I mentioned earlier, it is that was the last quarterfinal of the first rounds, right? Of the quarterfinals of the quarterfinals. For both weight classes, it is done now. So that's it's a wrap. And Jürgen Bramer looked pretty damn good to me at that weight class. He was coming down, like I mentioned, from light heavyweight. And I got to give him props, man. A couple other fights that I saw, I always thought he had some skill and whatnot. But there were a couple of fights that, I was just adjusting my headset, trying to get it on properly, and what do you know? I dropped it. Anyway, wow, that's a little bit harder than I thought. So anyway, I'm back here. I think you can hear me just okay. Wow, that probably won't work. I'm trying to adjust my headset a little bit here. It's going to be a little strange, actually. Hang on. Let me get a second here. All right. I guess we're not going to be able to do what we thought we were going to be able to do, but that's okay. I'm going to be okay. I think I'll find a way to get over it. It's going to take me some time, but I think I'll find a way to get over it. Anyway, like I said, Braemar looked good to me. He looked really good. Jurgen did. And Robert Brandt was a kid from Minnesota, unbeaten guy who, it's kind of funny. He moved up to middleweight, and this guy moved down to light heavyweight. And I don't really think weight had a lot to do with this now that I've seen it in the ring. First round, though, I thought Jurgen won. Counter left hands, kind of quick punches. Second round was closer to me. Jurgen still had a couple of left hands, but some really decent right hands may have gotten it for Brandt. But then after that, I gave Braemar the third, fourth, and fifth. I thought he started getting his jab going along with that left hand. Sometimes he'd do it, 1-2, jab right hand or left hand. Other times he'd just lead with the jab or lead with the left. The key to me was his good inside movement. There were some parts in those rounds that I mentioned that there was some two-way stuff. A couple of nice combinations late in the third round for Brandt, but that was about it. Fourth round, to me, just midway, he landed some really good, solid shots, I thought, did Braemar, along with his jab still scoring. Then the fifth round, good competitive round. There was a late low blow. I thought overall, though, Brandt probably had the better shots in that. But really, not much after that to speak of. It was pretty one-sided. You could have given Brandt another round or two, but stiff jabs, lead left hands. Braemar was bleeding, actually, but he was just busier. He was cutting off the ring better. But like I said, he was also using some in and out movement, which is nice and something I didn't know if he was going to be able to do. And I didn't know, going up and going down in weight, it can trouble everybody, right? It can really do that. And usually it does come down to skills, but sometimes when the skills are pretty equal, then we know that tends to mean the big dude, right? Or the bigger guy. So I didn't see weight being an issue in this one for either of them, really. I just thought the skill from Braemar just beat him. So he moves on, and he faces Callum Smith now. That's one semifinal, and the other one will be Eubank Jr. versus George Groves. You got to figure that's going to be in the UK, and you got to figure maybe that this next fight will be in Germany. Beyond the fights here, what were there, 2 cards here or 3? I think there was only 2. The crowds, for the most part, have been pretty solid. Some of them great, some of them just really good. So it's kind of nice to see that. A lot of people have kind of downplayed the World Boxing Super Series, and I do get it. Us Americans, I shouldn't say we're big into boxing, but, we want to see this thing on a normal, network where you can actually order it. I don't think you can order the Audience Network. It's only on DirecTV. So you can sit there and make a case and say, well, it's about the same number of homes as Showtime. Yeah, but you can order Showtime. You can't order. You got to order the whole DirecTV package to get the Audience channel. You know what I mean? So that's why I like DirecTV a lot, though. For a sports fan, and just for a variety of new networks that come on, they had Viceland like right off the bat. Like they're about it basically. But overall, if you look at how many TV deals they've secured, excuse me, for the next couple of years worldwide, and the sponsorship, the backing they have. A lot of people just think it's Richard Schaefer and Sutherland, but honestly, they promote it and they're there for that. But this is not something that they have a lot to do with behind the scenes as far as negotiating. I mean, I think they do, but not to the extent as, well, this is Schaefer's fault or this is Sutherland's fault, you know? And I go back to people don't realize that, you know, they made an effort to sell each and every 8 events, 8 straight weekends of boxing. You rarely see that in America. And to do it for September and October, which is prime time college football on Saturday nights, obviously once we get in October, you know, the baseball playoffs. Speaking of baseball, we got oh shit, I just looked up 5-0 now, not 2-zip, 5-zip in the second. Wow. Dodgers do have a guy on. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, I mean, it's, you know, to sit there and call it a failure, which I've heard many of people, not just on podcasts, but on Twitter and boxing forums, to just say they dropped the ball. This has just been horrendous. I get it, man. We didn't get a big TV station or even you know, one that's you can order or people already have or already used to having boxing on it, Showtime or whatnot. But, you know, a lot of it had to do with the World Boxing Super Series and how they wanted to sell it. And TV networks like time frames and knowing exactly when stuff's going to go. And that's kind of their goal, to be able to say, all right, in September, October, each and every weekend. And who knows, maybe it'll be every other weekend, you know, in the future. I don't know. Maybe they'll start to, you know, make them double headers with 2 weight classes on it. I really don't know. But I wouldn't go and call it this horrible, horrible failure in the first year. You got to remember, it was early July. Was it the second week in July or the first week? I can't remember. I think it was midweek when they had the draft. Think about that. So the first event's going to take place in about 2 months, less than 2 months actually when it happened, right around 2 months, and you don't even know the draw yet. There was people signing up at the last second getting in. So it is tough for a network to make that commitment with an unproven. We don't even know the matchups. And obviously the quarterfinals aren't going to feature the best matchups. So just be patient. Let's see what happens next weekend, next year. Let's see what happens at the beginning of the year. You know, they got to be able to, now that they have, here we are November. They have 2, 3, 4 months now, you know, because some of them will happen in February. You have the matchups on paper now. You know what I mean? So hopefully they get a U.S. network to pick it up. Even if it's NBC. NBC says they're interested in getting into the boxing business in 2018, or Spike. Well, here you go, man. There you go. You need some afternoon programming on a Saturday? Go for it. You know what I mean? Anyway, as far as the Showtime Sky Sports card, you know, unfortunately, well, I guess Dylan White versus Salinas was a really slow fight. I heard it kind of started out good. I saw some highlights of it, but I didn't get to see the whole kit and caboodle. Unfortunately, you know, they've been doing a good job of keeping that offline. And when I did manage to see a chunk of the fight, it was real dodgy. The recorded stream was just, it was bad. And even some tried and true websites that basically get everything, you go there and it was either unwatchable almost, or it had already been taken off. In just a plain search on Google or on YouTube, nothing was coming up, unfortunately. So I didn't get to see as much, but I heard I didn't really miss out on it. Same with Cal Yafaya. I heard he looked pretty damn good. That's one of those, you know, I couldn't find a good recorded stream, like a full fight. I couldn't even find a full fight of his, or not of his, but of this fight. A full fight, you know. So looked like he boxed pretty nice from the rounds that I did get to see, and then I saw maybe like a, I don't know, a couple minute highlight of the fight too. And obviously it's going to be more one-sided at that point because, you know, the highlight kind of favors him or what happened in the fight. So another good win though for him for both of them, really. I heard, though, that White didn't look that good, which is, you know, I don't know. Not really a huge surprise. Helenius, the Viking warrior, I guess he didn't really come to really be a warrior. But you still got to, do what you got to do. So, unfortunately, I wasn't really able to see those fights enough to break it down round by round. From what I saw highlight wise and even the rounds, because there were a couple of videos out there that had the third round, had the fourth round, that type of thing. But I don't know, man. It kind of sucked. Usually that's not the case. I mean, usually by Wednesday, there's something up that's pretty obvious, I guess you could say, and that just wasn't the case, man. It just wasn't the case. It was pretty weird, man. Little strange to say the least. But hey, kudos to them. They were able to, that's obviously the goal. They don't want their stuff out there like that. So, that's a good look on Eddie Hearn and whatnot, right? I mean, I think that's pretty good for them, if you ask me. Even though, like I said, it sucks, but the goal is, to not have as many, not to have the content out there, basically. And the content definitely was not out there as far as in a full form. So whatever Hearn's doing on that one, he did really well. And that's kind of a first in a sense, because it's never really, I've never come across that too much like that, especially like a good chunk of the cards. You know what I mean? That's I guess that would be the differential there. So let's get on to the main event, shall we? Of that card, because I did see that in crystal clear HD, of course, because it was on Showtime. I don't really know exactly what. I think a lot of people kind of thought that this would be an easy, just walkover opponent, and not that he basically did walk over him, obviously, in a sense, but he got hit plenty in this fight. Did Joshua? I think. I thought. I don't know. The stoppage, obviously, not a good look on the stoppage. I think that most people can agree with it. I don't think it was a scenario, well, yeah, if he hits him 3 more times, he's unconscious. A lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, not many people at all were saying that. But there were some moments where you're like, huh, so that's it then. That's all. That's literally, that's what you think? To me, it just kind of, like, I understand the promoter saying that. You know what I mean? I totally get that. Because what are they supposed to say? And you never know. A handful of combinations, maybe that would, maybe that would have happened. But I don't know. I don't think it was as dire, I don't think it was in a situation where it was that, that bad. And I don't know. We all know that the UK stops fights before we do in a lot of parts of the world. And that's not all bad. Let's be honest. That's not all bad. But I think ultimately it didn't, it was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be something where, he was getting saved, like, oh, dude, AJ got saved on that one. You know what I mean? Here's the deal, though. Well, let's get to the action, then I'll give a little bit more detail, even about his weight and whatnot, because that is something that we mentioned last week as well. Let me make sure that we're still going on YouTube. And YouTube, I'll be going for another probably 20, 30 minutes. Then I'll be shutting that down. You can listen to that link. That link will put you live. Or otherwise, you can call 646-381-4990. But that's not for another 20 minutes or so, probably more. So just so you guys know, when that goes down, the stream goes down, we will I do have a link in the description box. You don't have to hit it now, though. So as far as the fight, how the fight played out and whatnot, the first round, no surprise, right? Pretty slow. One, maybe two decent lands by Joshua. That's the only reason why I gave him the first round. And Carlos wasn't doing much. So, second round though, I got interesting in a couple of ways. One, there was a headbutt pretty early on, nose broken, bleeding on Joshua, and but Joshua started landing left hooks and uppercuts. And the only thing that Carlos was really landing clean was jabs at that moment. Third round, it was probably a little busier than the first round, but nothing really major happened, or not even landed. I shouldn't say happened. Nothing major landed. He was just a tad busier, was AJ. Fourth round, some early combinations and a nice uppercut. In fact, at the 115 mark, there was a counter uppercut. More combinations, and I think it was a left hook that knocked him down. I think it was the 10-second mark. Knocked him down, pretty solidly, whatever. Then you saw a cut, I believe it was the right eye on Takem. So his eye started having somewhat of an effect on him in that round and in there, thereafter. So that's a 10-8 round, clearly. Now, the fifth round, you could see Joshua was starting to let his hands go more. There was a moment where the doctor checked the eye and stopped the action. But in the last minute or so, some really nice right hands landed for Takem. And to me, by mid to late, the hooks and crosses were nice from AJ. He won the round, but his mouth was open a little bit more and breathing a little bit heavier than I thought it should be at that time. Now, obviously, when you're breathing out of your mouth because you have a broken nose, that's one thing. Your mouth is going to be ajar, I guess you could say, right? It's going to be open a little bit more than it normally would because you are breathing out of it. But it doesn't mean you're going to be breathing heavy because of a broken nose. You know what I mean? So, I kind of felt like I'm not sitting there saying that he gassed. You know what I mean? I think people, when you start to talk about people getting tired or fighters getting tired, it's like, well, he got tired. Well, I mean, considering his output, once again, I felt like you could see he got a little tired. And the reason why I say that is because of that, but also because after that, he kind of slowed down just a little bit. Some right hands, more left hooks in the sixth round, but nothing that big. Now, the seventh round, to me, I thought Takem win that round. That's the only one that I gave Carlos because although there was nice combos, it was a close round by Joshua, early and late. I thought those several right hands landed in that round, and I gave him that round. That's the only round I gave him. Now, AJ seemed to get back to being a little busier. Got his jab going in the eighth round as well, and also got to the body. And that's what I thought. One shot at a time, I thought he started having that effect. And then the headshots seemed like they were landing even cleaner at that point. Because, they're starting to open up a little bit more. You're starting to grow a little wary of getting hit low. And we've seen that a million times, right? So, to me, I thought and I hate to say, he recouped. Because like I said, I don't think he was like totally screwed or anything like that, But I do kind of feel like, he had a minor issue. Just minor. Nothing crazy. But I did kind of feel like he had a little bit of wind issue. Just in that one round I talked about, he kind of slowed down a little bit. Just didn't look, I don't know. There's just something. You could see it a little. Just a little. Ninth round. This was a good round to me. You could have looked at this round and said maybe 10-10 round. Some people gave it to Carlos Takam. I don't know. I'd have to watch this one over again. But once again, though, coming off a good 8th round, I thought 8th round, I thought AJ his volume dipped a little bit again. And it was almost like, and there's nothing wrong with pacing yourself, but it does seem like he needs to pace himself a little more, a la maybe Canelo, in that sense anyway. He just hasn't gone as long in as many fights, obviously. So we don't know still, right? To me, the counter and the lead right hands, it started actually backing up AJ a tad. And so that's what kind of leans to me that, hey, maybe, just maybe that could have been his round. Either way, though, I thought he gave a great account for himself in this fight. I really did. I thought he did well, man. Considering, I really did. A lot of people were trying to say it's going to be an early knockout. This dude's a tough dude, man, and he obviously got a good chin. Now, there was a few right hands in the 10th, then some left hooks that started to, let's just say this, they did start to move Carlos Takam. Whether you could see it in his body language or he just started moving more. Because, being that short and that compact and really that economical, it was a little different target for Joshua. And you could tell he wasn't as accurate. But to me, next thing you know, he's just stopped. And, it was kind of weird because he's literally ducking the shots. Like he's ducking a couple of shots while it's getting stopped. So that's what I'm like, well, dude's obviously got his stuff together. And I'm not up here saying, I'm not making it a big deal saying, oh, this was a garbage stoppage, dude. But I thought it was bad, and I thought it was clearly a bad one and early. But I'd say the writing was on the wall. Now, who knows? Maybe he sees, because Joshua spoke to the media after saying that he actually saw Carlos looking at the ref, almost looking for a way out. I personally didn't see that really, but I'm not in the ring. So, you know what I mean? I don't know. I didn't necessarily see that. It didn't look like he almost went to one knee or nothing like that. So, but, if he in fact was doing that, then maybe that's why the ref did it. But who knows? Maybe, Joshua steps up the pace even more in that round, and then he gets caught with a big right hand and it stumbles him. You never know. But then on the flip side, you never know. So don't act like it was this horrible, horrible stoppage and they're actually trying to save Joshua. It's not a saving Joshua situation, in my mind, in most people's minds. So bad stoppage, yes. UK stoppage, I'd probably say it's a UK stoppage more than just saying that was horrendous. I've never seen anything like that. That's nonsense. And maybe that's the truth from your eyes. It just, if you're going to have those viewpoints, you better have done your homework, That wasn't the worst stoppage of all time. You know what I mean? So, but I did see some, dare I say, troubling things. I don't like that word. I don't like to be troubled. No, I don't like that. I don't like the way that's framed, the framework of that, but I don't know. He weighed in at 254. That's kind of weird. What was it, 250 in his last fight? When he turned pro, what was he, 240 or 230? I think he was 230 when he turned pro. I saw that. I saw the side-by-side view of him weighing in this last fight, and then him weighing in, I think, in 2013 when he turned pro. There was quite a difference. Wood actually, me and Wood were talking on Twitter about this and how he was saying that, maybe it's something he's either not doing or doing improper or not improper, but he's doing something that is not helping him. Or not enough, or, I'm not sitting there ripping his training. It's not about, and Wood even made this clear that, it's not about he's not trying hard and learning his craft and working hard. Obviously, the guy works hard. Look at his ass. You know what I mean? Pause. But dude puts in the work. But there could be, I still think the fact that you're not ever looking at your weight in camp, I'm not a big fan of that. Not a huge fan of that. I think it's important to know your weight and where you've been at and where you're at. And you don't have to weigh in an exact weight at heavyweight. I realize that. But to me, especially when you said, I think I was a little too heavy for Klitschko. And I get the idea of putting on something extra because you weren't used to taking such a big shot. But then again, I just think the negatives, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And the negatives definitely outweigh the pros, in my opinion. Because if you're already having a little bit of gas issue and you're getting a little tired and you're not able to just explode like you want to for as long, I don't know. It's weird to say he needs to lean out because there's not a whole lot of leaning out he can do, probably. You know what I mean? Sure there is, and I gotta say it's weird because his body did look a little different. They spoke about that a little bit, and on the scale, I did notice a little, but then to come in 4 more pounds ahead of what you said was too heavy, that's kind of weird. Now he also spoke to, which we see this with a lot of fighters. He also spoke, Joshua did, to taking better care of his skills and his body outside of fight camp, And so he said that this time around, he actually got back in the gym a little bit more. He took a vacation, but just working on his craft. He's been a very active, busy fighter in the last handful of years. And this was kind of a larger gap, April to October for him anyway. So it's a little troubling to me that you don't keep track of your weight somewhat. That's a little troubling. I think if you got a strength and conditioning coach or even just a coach in general, I think that's kind of something you keep track of, especially if you're – now, who knows? Maybe he leaned out, got stronger by doing other stuff, but then he put on a little muscle. It's just funny to say leaning out, but then you're heavier, I'm not sure. I really don't know. It could have been his last week of meals. You never know. I don't know. But I do think that he needs to be below 250. I think that's obvious, because as I mentioned in that Klitschko fight, I think he did go for a knockout. He did throw some punches to get tired. But punching yourself out, as we said last week, and have to rest for 45 seconds, that's a normal run-of-the-mill boxing thing. That's not anything strange. So that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is him needing 3 rounds to recoup. To me, that's troubling. And that's exactly what he did. And, now Wilder has to get him in that situation. I think people are forgetting that too. You have to get someone into that desperate situation to get him tired and all that too. So, he got there, and it doesn't mean what's-his-toes is going to get him there. You know what I mean? So you have to get him there, tired, hurt, or whatever, to actually take him out or beat him or get him in that situation. So, we have to keep it all in reference when it comes to that. That's for sure. But I thought it was a good performance. I thought he fought a measured pace. The way he talked about it compared to how he actually fought was, I thought, pretty smart. He didn't take many chances. He started to open up a little bit more, and that's when he, started getting hit. So maybe he's being more careful. Maybe he is afraid of gassing out, and that's why he doesn't want to explode for as long as, we'd like to see him. So I don't know, man. I still think there's some questions But the questions aren't like, you know, this dude is going to get exposed, man. I'm not saying, I think he's already been exposed, but I did feel like we'd see a little bit more improvement off the last fight, and I think we saw some of that. I think that's fair to say. I think we saw some of that because, like I said, I thought he was a little bit more measured. He definitely wasn't getting into a bunch of exchanges. Um, so we'll see. The guy knows what the hell he's doing, though, in a lot of ways, He really does. Now, the thing about now that's basically recap, right? That's basically recap. So basically, we'll get into the rest of this stuff, all this talk, right? So we're going to talk what's next, the Wilder, Joshua, Dylan White, Eddie Hearn, HBO Showtime situation, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the UFC, Zuffa Boxing, as the T-shirt claimed. UFC entering the boxing fold. It is moldy. In 2018, and this is happening, folks. It's not a maybe. It's not a I don't know. And the rumors behind it all, they say they're actually getting into the sport investment-wise. And for me, that can only mean a couple of things. Can only mean a couple of things. Now, I talked to a couple of people that have a little bit more handle of the situation. And I'll pass along that information about it and just, some logical business stuff because boxing is worldwide. We know that, right? Eddie Hearn said he's going to come over and he wants to dominate in a couple of years. He wants to be, the top guy. He said it's going to take a while, but he said he wants to. Dana White stepping into that fold, that's pretty interesting to me. That's pretty interesting, especially when you look at the potential outlet he'd have. He'd have the top outlet out of anyone, in my mind, because of the Fox thing. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about some other news, too. Linares Garcia news. Terrence Crawford news. You remember Epix, that movie channel? Well, it's still around. I hadn't really heard of it before it started showing boxing. Looks like they're getting back into it as well in 2018. So we'll talk it through. But let's get, first of all, the TV ratings. A lot of people said, oh, my God, they were just horrible. It was way less than the Klitschko fight. I think it said the boxingvoice.com said 50% drop. I think I saw that. I think they got that from an article, but I'm not sure. So I think that's factual. Pretty sure it is. They more than likely wouldn't have that on the name of their thing, right? But to me, it was never, first of all, the Klitschko fight, people know Klitschko a lot more here than they do anybody else at heavyweight. Even Deontay Wilder, for that matter. So you're advertising for it. I didn't see it advertised anywhere this fight. Whereas I saw that Klitschko fight advertised. Which, that makes sense. That totally makes sense because Klitschko is a bigger name. Obviously, this was like a 10-day, 12-day, short notice, even though luckily Carlos was already training. And that was the plan, but still, it's a different opponent. People didn't know Pulev. They don't know Takam. You know what I mean? So a lot of people thought here it was just a worthless fight and he was going to run him over. So the importance level of the fight wasn't going to draw a big rating. We know the afternoon shows don't draw as big, obviously. But another key thing is the actual fight. Learning more about these ratings and what social media does to your peak number, that Klitschko fight was, it started out pretty good. Then it got those back-to-back rounds. What was it? The fifth and sixth, I believe, where they both hit the deck. I mean, just that alone, right there, is going to make like social media explode. So a lot of people. I mean, I remember Espinoza in an interview said that they had a bunch of people just buying the Showtime app because they just saw it on social media at a bar, at a wedding, or just randomly out, and were like, "Oh shit, I gotta watch that fight," So, and not that that app would have something to do with those ratings that they actually, the Nielsen ratings, but it doesn't surprise me that it was not only that, but look at the difference in competition. Saturday night, or I should say Saturday afternoon. Usually, like, if I'm looking at Central Eastern time, right? So 3:30 is usually a slot where there's a lot of college football on. Some of them are big games. Some of them are just known programs. But usually at night, there's some big ones too. 8 Eastern. There's some big ones in prime time too. Well, this was a little different because of the World Series being Saturday night. They put all the top ranked versus ranked games for college football. They put them on in that afternoon slot. And, I mean, I don't know if you know anything about that Ohio State-Penn State game, but that was a hell of a game, and that was going on during it. So the competition level, and even on the replay, going, with the World Series going on in general, you're talking 15, 18 million people on average watching that thing. So I think people have to put in the reference point. This was like a middle of the pack rating for his ratings. It's much lower than his last one with Klitschko, but that was an epic fight, one of the best fights of the year, and it's Klitschko, so we knew they advertised it a lot more. Whereas this, a lot of the money just buying this fight, because the HBO had that extra money laying around, they had to get up to like 1.6 million just to buy the fight and give to Anthony Joshua. So I'm sure they didn't have a lot of extra money to advertise something they don't even know the guy. You know what I mean? So it's middle of the pack. It's not his worst, ratings, but it's definitely it's the middle of the pack. So to me, not a big surprise there. I think a lot of people are maybe pro-American in this situation where they're like, see, dude, Wilder, Joshua is not a, he's not a name here. And we all know he's not a name here. He's never even fought here, So, but a lot of them are kind of trying to say that to, throw it back at Eddie Hearn. Like, see, dude, he's not even that big of a deal, man. That type of thing. And afternoon shows, the combined rating, they like to do that. HBO usually will put that in the press release when they do afternoon shows. The combined rating was actually really good. But I think people just have to, they don't know Showtime's on average ratings, so they see this and go, oh my God. It didn't even peak at 400,000. Because remember, as we've mentioned, Showtime has been ahead of the grade when it comes to streaming. Even the Showtime Extreme Undercards. They've had an app for a long time where you can live stream that a lot of boxing fans use. And Hulu Plus, by the way. Hulu Plus now, or not now, but for some time, has live streamed the fights. And they actually now have I think it's up to 60 channels. So you can you can actually have cable TV with that Hulu Plus package. So that's something to look into for the boxing fans, the cable cutters, the cord cutters, right? The cable cutters. They are cutting cable. Anyway, so as far as them making the fight, God bless Eddie Hearn, right? God bless him. That's cool. I'm glad he's really put a good dent in the UK, and now he's bringing his vibe at shows and whatnot. He's coming here, right? And I think he's done a lot of great stuff. The guy can promote. There's no doubt about it. Time will tell how he does over here. But either way, the guy's accomplished a lot in a little bit of time. Very short amount of time. However, I just won't agree with him about this 2-fight deal. Him saying that the Dylan White fight has nothing to do with the Anthony Joshua fight, and there's no that he says that's not how it works. And I'm not going to go far on this because we talked about this last week, but it's pretty obvious, dude. Like, remember when Cotto, was it Canelo or both of them? They had to make a deal with Golovkin to say they're going to fight him next or they get the belt. You know, that type of stuff. I mean, these type of agreements happen all the time. I've even heard him willing to sign a 2-fight deal for Joshua and Wilder, one in the UK, and then potentially the rematch in the States, which I think that'd be pretty cool. But when it doesn't line up. And the thing I like a lot about Eddie, but I like how he just says it. Like, after a while, if there's any confusion, he's going to at least say his side. Now, a lot of times you hear the other side come out, and that's what's cool about it. He's pretty open to the public about, well, this is why this fight's not happening, or whatever. This guy's outpricing himself, or whatever. He puts it out there so boxing fans know, but then a lot of times he gets the rebuttal too. And so we can get some information going both ways. So I really like that. Obviously, IFL TV is the number one source for Eddie Hearn stuff, but in the UK in general. But to me, all these things sound great coming out of Eddie's mouth, and a lot of it makes sense. But when he comes and says stuff like, well, that has nothing to do with the other. Like, so why'd you say it has everything to do with each other? Why'd you say that this fight has to happen in order to get that fight? Well, obviously this is pretty important to you. And I know it's a good move for you. You could get another belt for one of your guys and then build that rematch. That'd be a big rematch between White and Joshua for unification, right? Because, you know, one, it was a good fight. Two, you know, White was hurt in the fight. He had a shoulder injury and whatnot. So anyway, my whole point is I just don't understand the premise of not signing the 2-fight deal. And Wilder's even saying it openly now for quite some time. I'm down to fight White. Just give me the 2-fight deal. And you can't sit there and say it's going to, you know, make that fight so much bigger and your purse will go up 10 to 15%. You may get to $8 or $10 million, dude, if you fight him, man. It's going to be great. But we're not going to give you Joshua next. What the hell is that? Now, if you want to marinate it, marinate it. But just say it, Eddie. Just say it. You're always so open and out front. Well, to me, this is a weird situation. We all know it's because of the right hand of Wilder. It's not that Joshua is scared and Eddie's scared. But why not get a couple more fights in before he'd have to face a guy that, if he gets gassed, could take him out? Because that's the thing about Wilder that makes him dangerous. It's just, you can outbox him, you can be winning the fight, but he just needs to land that one good shot, and he can change stuff. So I understand that this fight would need to grow. I mean, but I'll say this. If, in fact, Joshua comes here and fights, you know, on a card at night, you know, in New York City or Vegas, and he gets the primetime slots, you know, fight Big Baby Miller or somebody like that at the Barclays or Madison Square, or like I said, in Vegas, whatever, and have a fight here, have Wilder do an afternoon show over here, obviously do a night show over, you know, at the O2, February, what'd they say, 3rd, and then line it up. Do it within, I mean, back-to-back weekends would be great, but if you can't do that, then line it up within a couple of weeks from each other, hype it up and do it. Now, if you think it needs more build, fine. Then say that. Say that. Don't say he needs a bigger name in the UK, then he goes and gets a bigger name, and then you don't give him the fight. Just say it straight up. You know? If you're so confident, then just say it. That's the only problem I have with that. Anyway, let's move on. Because like I said, we went in pretty deep last week on that topic. We don't want to be too repetitive, but I don't get it. Now, as far as HBO, you know, stealing Joshua, I don't know financially, unless Peter Nelson could talk HBO into taking a chunk of the budget and saying, hey, this is all for Anthony Joshua. Maybe they could do that. They made a run at him for this fight in the last fight, but they also had that excess money, with no Terrence Crawford and no Lomachenko. They and other fighters with Top Rank, they had a bunch of money at the end of the year that they needed to get rid of. So I don't think they can carry over their budget. So I'm assuming that's why they had all this money. So I heard it's as high as 1.6 they threw at him. But are they going to be able to keep throwing that at him, consistently? I don't know. Out of their budget, because Showtime has a bigger budget. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So not any of that. So HBO could make a run. And maybe if they get serious, that they say this is something we want, okay, that'd be a big move for them. It's going to take some money, but a big move. But to me, I think Showtime still has the inside track because of the budget. And also, they also have that CBS outlet that HBO doesn't have. And you could do a Joshua fight during the afternoon after a golf tournament, a golf tournament that starts at 1 or 2 Eastern, runs for 3 hours, and then you could do a live right there, or you could do it at night, have them come over and they could do a fight there and make, get them in front of 3-4 million people. So I think the budget in the CBS outlet, I think, is just a little too strong. And also the fact that they've been working with Mayweather, CBS, and Showtime, they got to think that they could, one, turn this heavyweight fight into a big fight, obviously. And then 2, that Joshua potentially could be that next big superstar in the States too. So I think they're taking that all in, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's not as easy as people are saying because of the Showtime budget. And because, well, who's the heavyweight? Parker? That's the only thing they got is Parker? Wilder and him, much bigger fight here and there. So just based off, and I'm not trying to say Wilder's this huge, name in the UK, but let's be honest, either is Parker. And when it comes to hyping a fight, though, that's obvious. That's obvious. Wilder will hype the fight. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the money coming out of Showtime and CBS is going to be more than the money coming out of Australia, if it's just to show the fight there. Now, if it's Australian money like that Pacquiao Horn, well, yeah, then they got money. Then they got money to put out there. And maybe that's what they'll try to do, get him in Australia. You never know. But when it comes to hyping up a pay-per-view in the UK, Wilder's clearly the choice for that. So, yeah, that's about wraps it up. I think that Anthony Joshua still has, that Showtime still has the inside track. I think there's one more fight under contract. And the way this deal was made is basically the best offer, we get a chance to match it. And I'm assuming they have an option or 2 after the next fight as well. But I'm sure they'll be looking to extend them. Who knows, though? Who knows? So, a couple other news items, and then we'll get to the UFC and Zuffa boxing, because that's a pretty big deal if you ask me. So it's still 5-zip, bottom of the 4th. It's only the 4th inning, though, so there's plenty of time. Long game. So far, anyway. Not compared to their other ones, though, right? So Eric Gomez, who's the president, is he just the president or president CEO now? Either way, he's the man that runs things over there. Oscar gave him the reign a while back. Eric Gomez came on Boxing Twitter and kind of sent some, I'm not going to say a shot at Mikey Garcia, but he sent something his way. And, it was pretty interesting, I thought. I thought that was real interesting, actually. Let me go to it real quick here on Boxing Twitter, as I like to say. So Eric Gomez, you can follow him at Make a War, which is a pretty cool. All right, so he says Twitter handle, cool Twitter handle to finish that. Okay, this is a while ago now. What the? Where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? Okay, did he? Okay, he says Mikey Garcia. If you are serious about wanting to fight Jorge Linares, call me. No options, no extra fights, straight up. And hashtag no excuses. It's like, that's a bit of a shot. That's a bit of a shot, I'd say. No excuses, bro. That's funny. But so, anyway, you got a response from Mikey, obviously. He's not going to, come out the side of your mouth and not get something back. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. But he said, basically, all right, dude, call me. Like, you know my number, so I'm not sure why you're on here, talking too much about this, like, that type of thing. What's he say? Huh. The response for that is weird. Anyway, that's basically what he said. He said, "Hey, do you know my number? I'll give you a ring later, but like I got it, man. We got it. Like we want the fight, dude. That's cool, but you don't have to do it all publicly and all that. So, no need to put it out in public. You also have my number." He says, "LOL. I'll call you later, bro." So now they have had those conversations. They've had those conversations. And they're supposedly it was positive. Obviously, we'll know somewhat soon. So we'll see, man. That would be a great little matchup there, I think. I really, really like that matchup. I think that'd be pretty cool, man. I think it's a matchup that needs to happen because I don't like how the Ring Magazine made that the mandatory, how they did that. I didn't like that at all. I thought it was kind of bullshit. Or not kind of. It was full on bullshit. But, it is what it is. And for those who don't know what I mean, they went from 1 to 3. You know how it's 1 and 2 makes a lineage for the weight class and you get the Ring Magazine. And that's great and everything. But that's not how it went down. So they skipped number 3. And, they skipped number 2. So, and they have, in their rules, there has been other 1 against 3s making a lineal, but usually that has to do with injury or the person just not wanting to make the fight or whatever. That wasn't the case with the guy at number 2. It was that Zlatishinin or whatever, Zlatikanen, who got beat real quick by Mikey Garcia. So I'd like to see that fight. I think it's a good fight. They're talking about it. Now, obviously, the HBO Showtime thing, I don't know. Is HBO going to put up as much money for Showtime? Or, compared to Showtime for that fight? I doubt it. To be honest with you, I doubt it. But you never know. Maybe they will. Now, on the other side, will Golden Boy say, "Hey, we're not going to put them on Showtime. We want to make the best fights." I remember a little while back they had that Matisse Provodnikov fight. They went to Showtime and they said, "Hey, the biggest bidder gets it." And I don't mind that, especially when no one's under actual contract. So we'll see. He's saying a lot of things on his side, but if someone comes up with more money, are you going to not let your fighter do it? I don't know. That's what we're going to have to find out. Anyway, like I mentioned, the Epix channel. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it's a movie channel. Some of you probably have it. And they got into the boxing business a couple years back. I remember Dan Raphael did some commentary for them. Most of them, some good fights, some throwaway fights, whatever. It was another outlet. They're thinking about I don't know if they've bought it already or they're going to buy it or whatever, but the Contender Series. Boxing fans remember that, the Contender Series on NBC. Then I think the last year was on ESPN. But I guess they're kind of trying to figure out, should we buy the Contender Series and do that? Or should we spend that money, that investment, on just good fights? I guess that's the conundrum that they're trying to figure it out right now. So Epic's channel might be back. Hey, maybe they'll invest in the World Boxing Super Series. Who knows? Ray Beltran became the 135-pound not mandatory. He's going to fight for the belt at 135, the WBO. What is it? What? I forgot what that stands for. The funny thing about Aaron. But anyway, Terrence Crawford is now the mandatory for one Jeff Horn. So that fight will probably be in the springtime. The reason why that 135-pound belt is available to fight for is because Terry Flanagan actually vacated the 135 belt, and now he's going up to 140, where he's going to fight a much easier fight than Linares or anybody else, at the top level, for the 140-pound belt. And it just, he just decided that Flanagan did. Obviously, he didn't take the deal for the Linares fight because that was out there. So it is kind of funny how now all of a sudden, because that fight went down the drain, then Eric Gomez and Golden Boy are willing to go back and talk to Mikey. Only when the Flanagan fight was done. Well, they probably are going to go that Flanagan fight anyway. Of course, if they would have been able to get a long term with Mikey, maybe that would have been a different situation. So as far as news, that kind of wraps it up. Beyond one more thing. The UFC entering the boxing world. It is happening, folks. It's happening. Whether you're excited about it, whether you're worried about it, whether you're in between on it, it sounds like the UFC, Zuffa Boxing. I'm not going to say that they're going to call it that. I think that's what they called it, though, for that. I think they had to register, even though they weren't the lead promoter. I believe they had to register, the UFC did, as a boxing promoter to be able to put it on with Mayweather. I believe that's what he said. So, Zuffa Boxing. Okay, so he is entering the fold. Now, and it's happening because they said it's going to happen. And two, come on, dude. Like, he's been talking shit. Him and Bob have been going back and forth. So, obviously, Bob knows some things, and they're serious about it. This is really going to happen. It's the real deal. Like I said, now, maybe you got a problem with this. I don't know, but I'm going to play a clip from the Jim Road. Man, I'm having problems tonight. Jim Rome, the podcast. This is episode 11. Dana White. I do have to get it to the part really quick because, of course, when you want to cue something up, it goes away. Somehow, some way. it goes away. So this is our new guy. Eddie can't be happy about this. Like, mother effer, dude. I'm supposed to be the guy that's going to save boxing in America. So we're getting close to it. Here we go.
See, to me, going on that beach and hanging out is coming into this office and doing this every day. That's what this is for me. This is what I love to do. Believe me,
he's talking about how he's happy still promoting, and he's only 48. He wants to do this for the rest of his life.
I've been on the vacations and I've done that shit. After 4 days, I'm ready to kill myself. I can't do these go hang out and do nothing all day. It's not my personality. It's not who I am. This is what I love to do. This is my passion.
That doesn't mean you're not trying to expand. You talked about getting into boxing recently, that you might be open to promoting boxing under the UFC umbrella. So let's get into that for 1 minute. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you throw your hat into the ring to see how it goes? Or do you feel like you can go in and dominate boxing the way you have MMA?
Yeah, I just know how good we are at what we do, and I know we're better than pretty much everybody else out there. I think that the guys who are involved in boxing, the fighters, would enjoy being under this umbrella and fighting for us. And yeah, I do think we could do it better than everybody else does. So what the hell? Why not give it a shot?
So I was going to say, do you think that the boxers would be better served going with you and UFC rather than staying, for instance, with Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya?
100%.
How come?
We're good. We're the best. We're the best at what we do. We think about the future. If you look at this facility that we're in right now, state-of-the-art facility with every piece of equipment you can think about as far as recovery, getting stronger. We have a restaurant here that they eat in every day for free. Costs nothing for the fighters to come here and do all this stuff. Plus, we have a physical therapy center here where all the fighters can come in and get physical therapy for free. On top of, I think we do our events better than they do. Our production is better than the production that's out there. I think everything in this business that you could possibly do, we do better. And we have health insurance for our fighters.
Obviously, Bob Arum was not happy to hear any of this, and his
Fuck
quote.
him.
I was going to say,
Dana,
his quote was, "What the fuck is White talking about? White is talking or speaking from desperation now. He is the spokesperson for what could be a failing business," end quote. I mean, I didn't even get a chance to get your reaction before you gave me your reaction. Dana, you were already on record as saying, quote, "Arum is the biggest dirtbag in all of sports." So what do you make of him now that he's saying this, and that he said that you might be a spokesperson for a failing business?
Right. This is the same guy who said this same shit 15 years ago about me and the Fertitas. He said they're losing oodles and oodles of money. I don't even know what the fuck oodles and oodles means, but we're losing oodles and oodles of money, and this business was a joke. It was going to go under. Nobody will ever be into a sport like this. And here we are today. I mean, this guy is such a jerk off. Literally the biggest piece of shit in all of sports. Bob Arum, ladies and gentlemen.
Dana, before you go, I want to talk to you about Las Vegas.
So anyway, that is from the Jim Rome podcast from yesterday. That was yesterday. So, and, I've read a couple of different things, pertaining to this subject, and it's happening. It's happening. Now, who's he going to promote? Like, what's he going to promote? Obviously, him and, unless it's a humongous pay-per-view, I don't have to tell you that he's not going to do many shows with Top Rank. Right? And so he's not going to get Top Rank fighters per se, and he's not going to promote Top Rank fighters. You know what I mean? Just in general, obviously. I think that's pretty much a given, right? I think that's we can all agree with that. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the potential to get him under the banner at some point, but right now, right? And then Golden Boy, him and Oscar aren't on great terms. Doesn't mean they can't work together, but first of all, they don't have a deep roster, and second of all, it's not like he's going to promote Canelo just randomly, right? They got Canelo handled. K2, Golovkin. You start to look around and you go, well, is he just going to sign random fighters? Not random, but a couple of fighters and build those guys up? And while he does that, is he really going to build a company and start signing prospects and then build those guys up? Because that's the thing. When you start to promote events, that means you have to have, obviously, the whole event filled with fights. Sometimes 10 fights, 8 fights, 6 fights, whatever. And that's where I'm wondering, what fighters. I mean, here's the point. The only fighters with any kind of name that are already in the realm of boxing that have fought in front of big crowds at the Barclays or wherever that don't have a promoter, well, that's obviously pointing to the PBC, right? I mean, I'm not saying that the PBC and Fox are doing this deal and they're about to sign and all. I'm not saying that. I mean, that is a rumor. But, I'm just saying, like, when he says, because, right now UFC and Fox have a deal in place. The way ESPN has maneuvered their business, I'll say, right? They're heavy on the stream now. They're going full force with the stream. And by the way, Fox does, or not Fox, well, Fox does as well, but the UFC has their own streaming channel, by the way, which is something that could help boxing undercards and just in general and help their, content. But they have a deal with Fox, and it sounds like now that we're like, 2.5 years ago, it sounded like ESPN was making a run to buy some of the rights. Maybe not all of it, but buy a chunk of the rights for UFC. But if you look at the NBA and how much money they have to dole out to that, and also Monday Night Football, you start to say, maybe they're not going for that UFC contract now. And obviously they've had a lot of layoffs and they are losing subscribers. Now they're they're ahead of the game with the stream. They got a strong stream game, right? And they still have a product that people want, period. So you could sit there and say ESPN's going to die in a couple years. That's not true. That's not true. They're losing subscribers, but almost everybody's losing subscribers. So let's keep it all in frame reference, basically. So if the UFC already has a deal with Fox in place right now, it's still good. And then they're going to, I believe it's to the end of 2018. And basically, I believe the time frame for them to negotiate is actually up now. And CT, I see you on there. I'm going to get to you in just a moment here. So it sounds like they're going to re-up and do another deal with Fox. That's what it sounds like. Now, there's also talk that they were trying to separate it, right? They were trying to just like other sports where it's on a couple different channels. So maybe sign 2 big deals and spread it out, whatever. Maybe that's still the case. Who knows? But either way, it sounds like Fox is going to be involved in the next deal, and they're currently in a deal right now. So they have a good working relationship, or at least a working relationship regardless, right? So if you start to add it up, you go, I started talking to Jed. I think it's Jed Goodman, something like that. A little bit. I asked him a couple questions on Twitter. He's a ratings guy, bigger on Jed Goodman. He's good place for ratings and questions and all that. And, I asked him, what are your thoughts on the potential that the PBC could, the potential that they could be involved in this deal. And that maybe, because the way he said it made a lot of sense too, because, the UFC has so many dates. And that's the thing. Since they got this deal, it's great and all, but they've had to spread it out so much that obviously, they have, their last 2 pay-per-views have been rumored to be below 100,000. And we know what that means for boxing-wise, right? That, it's that's not a good pay-per-view. And, there's some rumors that they don't want as many dates because they're so spread out, and they have, in these type of sports, combat sports, the injuries play an issue into it, right? And, you can only either put up random crappy cards or cancel so many cards too. Because after all, that's the thing about the TV business. They don't want stuff canceled, too often. You can push it back, but it's tough. So he says, that could be, this Jed Goodman said, he said, it'd be a good idea this year. UFC will do 17 FS1, FS2, FFX card, main event cards, basically, 4 Fox shows, meaning, primetime Fox, and 12 pay-per-view prelim shows. Live content is key. That's what he responded to me in one of them. And there was, I think it's Fight Opinion. I think it's fightopinion.com too, by the way. But you can find Fight Opinion on, that's his Twitter handle. And he says that he could see how UFC boxing could help Al Heyman and Fox Sports for, the PBC. So, when you start to go, wow, if they want to do less shows and kind of go back to stacking it, because remember, mid-2000s to late 2000s, dude, that 5-6 year stretch, the reason why those pay-per-views were continuing to produce, yeah, maybe they didn't have a bunch of $1 million ones, but who cares if they're putting 580 and 340 and 700 and 500 and 400, it's constant money. And we all know they don't pay as much to the UFC fighter, even in the main event, as, they do in boxing. So if you want to kind of bring it back to, those were stacked cards. They were well worth the pay-per-view. And that kind of, the product got leaned out, right? It got watered down. And that's where they're at right now. So if they do maybe a little less, but then still have content to give to Fox, and FS1, has only been around for like 5 years, but it still needs content. And if you look at those toe-to-toe Tuesdays, I've said it several times over the last couple of years, usually they're the highest rated thing on that day. And even college basketball, which they have a deal on, and they're going to actually start to get bigger college basketball now with the Big Ten, rather than the old Big East and some of the AAC stuff that's not as big of a deal. But they've even outnumbered some of those college basketball games. And that's just a toe-to-toe Tuesday. They rarely have names on there or anything like that. So, and then you start to look at the UFC and go, okay, well, the Fertitta brothers and Dana White had this idea to buy the UFC. The UFC already existed before Dana White, right? And they saw what it was. They made some tweaks to it, bought it, made some tweaks to it, and then invested into it. Well, if you're going to invest in the boxing, that's why I think the PBC's involved, because they already have a working relationship with Fox. Obviously, they cut everything down to Fox. Now, you could say that's because they didn't have money, whatever you want to say. Spike was willing to give them money again this year. You got to remember that. Now, obviously not as much money as they wanted, right? So obviously that didn't work, but they were going to pay for a third year, by the way. The negotiation failed. Now, the ESPN thing, that's kind of weird. There was plenty of dates left. That could have been one of those things. We heard about lawsuits. We haven't heard them filed yet. I don't know what they would be waiting for to not file them, but I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But I'm not saying the PBC is going to get this giant deal with Fox, dude. It's on. It is on. 10-year, $14 billion. You know what I mean? I'm not. Obviously, $14 billion is just a throw-out number. But I'm not saying that. But if you have, what does the UFC need? Or I'm sorry, what does the PBC need? FS1 needs content at a pretty affordable price. Well, boxing can give you that to an extent. Think about it, though. They already have a relationship with Fox. UFC already has a relationship with Fox. To me, that's why I say if they're ready to invest something into the sport, are they going to buy like 4 fighters and then build them up and then do the company? Or would they just do this thing that's already got a little bit of branding to it, buy it, and put there? Because what do what the PBC fighters need promoting? You could tell when Ludabella or Schaefer is at the helm, the fights do better. They just do, obviously. And we know now, it's been about a year since we've known this, like officially, because of the court case, that they were going to sell Golden Boy for $100 million. So the PBC was going to have the Golden Boy Promotions as their lead promoter. They were the number 1 in the game at that point. So they wanted to have a lead promoter. Now, Oscar changed his mind and didn't sell, and it blew up Golden Boy, but it also blew up Al Heyman a little bit because he didn't have a constant promoter there as he would have with Golden Boy. So wouldn't that make sense? Think about the 10 fighters on the PBC right now. Some of them just need that push. Dana White is popular in the States. He's popular worldwide. He's good for interviews. He's edgy. He says, in a sense, in a weird way, he's a little like Eddie. He's not as smooth as Eddie, but he'll say what's on his mind like Eddie. And they do market. They already have a brand that has a fan base. So if he can get even 5, 10, 15, 20% of that over a year or two time, whatever, I'm just throwing numbers out there, that's just stuff he could bring in right there. You know what I mean? So I, for one, wouldn't be surprised if the PBC got bought by UFC. I really wouldn't. Zuffa Boxing buys it at a super low price like they did with the UFC, and they see a potential in investment. And so they're helping out their own deal. The new owners would now give them 2 sports of content, which could fatten their deal potentially. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. And who has that stock? He has the biggest and basically the best roster. Now, he doesn't have the biggest stars, but the one thing you got to remember about that stuff is, like you say Top Rank, okay, at 147, who does Crawford have to fight at 147? You know, look at Golden Boy. Well, first of all, who's their second best fighter? Linares? Maybe it will be JoJo at some point. There'll be some other ones that are coming up, but are they really names? And then who do they have to have them fight? You know, if you look at who you have in-house for PBC compared to the other 2, 3 guys, right? Promotional companies. Al Heyman has access to the same fighters that Top Rank does outside of their bubbles. So they have the same access to those people, right? But then they also have more inside the roster. They have more at featherweight. They have more at 154. They have more at welterweight. You see what I'm saying? So now middleweight is really nice on HBO. It's a couple different promoters. It makes a lot of sense there. But what I'm saying is it'd make a lot of sense for them to have a head start. They already have a Fox deal. They can already advertise off the back of their own promotions. It might give them a chance to, you know, give away some of their dates that they already have locked down, you know, and give that to boxing while at the same time improving their own UFC product. Because I'm just looking at the landscape, and like I said, if they're going to invest into it, I'm wondering who they're going to, you know, invest in. So will they make a splash right away and sign like 5 and then show and prove and show fighters to come to ours? Or will they just buy the PBC straight up? You know, I remember Dana saying, you know, I heard all these things about Al Heyman. all these horrible things to work with. We sat down and made a deal. It was really easy. So they have a working relationship there too. So I'm not saying that's going to be the case. But if they're going to make an investment, my guess is it'd be involving maybe not buying the PBC, right? Because Showtime, obviously, maybe it's just buying a chunk of, or buying 5 Al Heyman fighters and going from there. I have no clue. But I'll take another promoter that already has a deal. And if he's willing to do it, I really don't know. Are they going to go back to Spike and do a time buy and start it out like they started out, with the UFC and do that and just call it, Zuffa Boxing and then sign some guys? I don't know. Canelo's not available to sign. Top-ranked fighters aren't available to sign to promoters. The only guy with the stable in need of a consistent promoter is Al Heyman, PBC. So, I don't know, man. It's kind of interesting. But either way, I'll take Dana White coming in because, he can talk up a good game. I thought he's made some mistakes, but haven't we all? It's real easy to be Monday morning quarterbacks, backseat driver, saying, oh, he should have done this, should have done that. Man, they invested like $50 million and really made a big – now, they were desperate too at times. They even admit it. They admit that they were ready to give up and that this the reality show was their last hope, and that popped off, So we'll see. Maybe he'll do it from the ground level. My guess is it just make a lot more sense to have some fighters that already have a little bit of name that need promoting, that you can see the potential that's there. I mean, Errol Spence, Heyman's got the guys. And when they're promoted well, you can see. You can see it. The Barclays is a great example of that. Sometimes in Vegas, but that's about it. Couple shows in California once in a while, but usually it's just Vegas and the Barclays. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and shut down the YouTube stream. If you're just listening to it right now, let's say in a couple days from now, it's Wednesday, you're listening to it Friday, there is a link that'll send you right to the rest of the podcast. So you'll be able to listen to it there. And for those who are live on there right now, I'm going to shut it down. Use the link. You can keep it going. Otherwise, 646-381-4990 is the number to call. You can listen to the rest of the show.